Political parties have started to make their decisions known. Yesterday, the EFF announced that they will not be getting into any deals with either the DA or the ANC, commenting that both parties were the devil. However, the EFF did say that as the DA was the better of the two devils and that they would vote with them specifically in order to both weaken the ANC and to ensure that service delivery is not delayed. Meanwhile, the DA says it was quite clear that the two parties' ideological ideas are poles apart. So let's get a little bit more of an understanding of what is in store for us going forward. Ralph Mathekga, he's here, he's in studio, he's an independent political analyst. Ralph, interesting times. Good morning to you.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, we have uncertainty of this wider scale. It's not clear. This is just the beginning of what is to come. EFF is not committing to anything. What they are committing to is continuing to remain the EFF that we have known.
Yeah.
Being critical, trying to hold those who exercise power to account. And they are saying to the DA that we don't trust you enough to go into a grand coalition with you. Yeah. So they are going to be observing, and also at the same time they will be cementing their identity as a party going forward.
All right. And I think exactly what they said in the press conference, that's what the voters wanted when they voted for the EFF. It's that loud voice, it's that absolute opposition. It's standing up and shouting and, defending every decision and questioning every decision. And that's what we're going to see going forward. I mean, if my understanding is correct from the EFF.
Certainly. I mean, the voters did not give any of these parties an outright mandate, but also I'm interested in the interpretation that actually they think that the voters want them to keep doing what they were doing in a similar way. But also, the voters are actually saying to the EFF, you also don't have an outright mandate, so we don't trust you on your own. And I think that they need to be thinking of a way to work together. One can actually say that the EFF is not being responsible enough because they are avoiding to own up to being part of a council, to enter into a grand coalition. I think that the voters also want South African parties to cooperate. The question is whether does EFF understand that interpretation, that they also need to cooperate to some extent. They cannot just be full-time disruptors. They need to get into decision. They need to own up to some of the decision. They need to make mistakes and go back and explain them to their voters.
All right, now let's just break it down now, because I mean, I think a lot of viewers out there are as confused as perhaps I am as well with some of these municipalities and how they're going to be run. Now we've got minority parties, we've got different coalitions, new oppositions. So let's talk about this, and we'll talk about it one by one. So let's start off with perhaps the easiest of the lot, the Nelson Mandela Bay. We've got Athol Trollip, who is expected to be sworn in as the mayor today, but they are not the DA are not outright winners there. These are coalition agreements that are giving them a little bit more power. Talk to me about how it's going to be run there.
Well, Nelson Mandela Bay is interesting because if you look at the fraction that the EFF has vis-a-vis what the DA has, the DA can actually work with other smaller parties there. Yeah. They've got a better majority there compared to in other cities. It means that in Nelson Mandela Bay, they will not really be fully held ransom by the EFF if they want to make decisions. They can work with those other smaller parties, because if you compare all the parties, you find out that it is only the EFF that has a very strong ideological position. Other smaller parties, I think they're just trying to survive. Some of them have got their percentage being lowered, so they will be much more willing to cooperate with the DA than the EFF will be willing.
Now, what about in Tshwane? Because that's another one where we're expecting Simange to be elected mayor there, and the EFF are in agreement. They are not contesting him as a candidate. So how is that going to be working?
Very interesting about Tshwane. Here the EFF is saying to the DA that we will give you those key positions, but we do not commit to any future cooperation with you. So it's you can call it a pay-as-you-go arrangement.
Goodness
Anytime me. You want a decision to be made, you're going to have to buy airtime. You're going to have to talk to the EFF and say, what about this decision? It's going to make the process of making decisions very lengthy, very laborious, much more work than it has been seen before.
Is it a good thing?
Well, it's a good thing for democracy. It means each and every decision will have to go through a rigorous test, as it has to be canvassed across these parties, including the EFF. But democracy involves lengthy process of decision making. It might delay decision making, especially when the system is settling down. Expect it to be a little bit chaotic, maybe in the first years of this, but it will settle down. In the future, I think South African parties will learn to work better, efficiently under a coalition. For now, it's a test case on this wider case. Of course, we have seen it happening in the Western Cape, but the intention was to swallow the small parties. You can't swallow the EFF. It won't work.
Not at all. And they won't allow anybody to. Exactly. I mean, the decisions that they made yesterday, we'll move on to the big question of Johannesburg in a minute, but the moves that the EFF made yesterday, from my understanding and from my reading, a lot of political commentators, analysts have said that was the smartest move they could have made, because it was very easy for them to be swallowed up. But by doing what they've done, they are now proclaiming themselves as a force to be reckoned with, and they are not going to disappear anytime soon.
Exactly, and it gives them a chance to grow, because they don't have to spend much time on government programs. All they have within the city will be to exercise that accountability, to demand accountability. And I think one of the issues they are careful about is not to appear as having betrayed their voters. You know what it means to go into a power agreement. They have avoided that. And that also means that if they feel that municipality is not doing the right work, they're going to disrupt it, as we have seen them disrupting things that they don't like. So it works very well for them, and they have avoided that risk of being seen as trying to crawl back to the ANC or being swallowed into the DA's mandate.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to Joburg, because there's still a big black question mark over Joburg. Herman Mashaba, the man in question, the EFF don't want him. Again, one of the reasons given, and perhaps you know more than I do, was that during the campaigning he was not very complimentary of smaller parties, and that was one of the reasons why the EFF do not support him. Is there something else? Why are they fundamentally against Herman Mashaba, even though the DA have said, and yesterday announcing, he is still their candidate?
He's not one of the best speakers you have there. He flip-flopped a lot. You remember when he was nominated to run, he said he doesn't like affirmative action. He realized that that statement didn't work, came back and then retracted that statement. So when it comes to that relation, striking a rapport by way of speaking, he doesn't do a great job on that. And the DA is concerned, the EFF's concern here is to say that he's a capitalist. But I don't think Mr. Mashaba has demonstrated any commitment to capitalism to a point where he will be a stumbling block for the EFF to work with him. I think it's just a question of his demeanor. And I think that they're also saying that, fine, you might end up becoming a the mayor, but you have to know, we don't like you. We don't like the grand position you are taking. We don't like your relationship to capital. But there are indications that they might vote for him, although he will always know he's indebted to them as a mayor throughout the term.
Yeah, all right. So he'll always walk around thinking, I owe you. But the reality is that the ANC may still retain Joburg if this agreement is not reached. And they've got until, I think it's Wednesday next week. And the heavyweights are going out, talking to the EFF. I know that Bantu Halumisa, the UDM, also from the Cope side, Masiwe Lekota, apparently they've been talking quite a lot to Julius Malema, according to reports, and hoping to steer him in the direction of the DA and saying, look, let's go this way, more of an anti-ANC vote than anything else. So it's interesting.
He will be, the EFF is committed to frustrate the ANC. Yeah. And they want anything but the ANC. And it's highly unlikely that they will work with the ANC. Chances are that they will try to go towards the direction of the DA reluctantly, even if they don't like Mr. Mashaba, as long as it delivers the grand goal of making sure they kick the ANC out of power. I think they're going that way.
All right, let's talk about Ekurhuleni as well. That's an interesting, that's an interesting situation. Is that is this looking like it's going to be retained by ANC?
The ANC does not necessarily need the EFF to be able to succeed in Ekurhuleni. They have got quite a good number. They can work with other smaller parties to be able to garner that majority that they need, that 50 plus. Actually, I didn't even think Ekurhuleni will become part of this type of conversation.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately for the ANC,
exactly. Yeah. Unfortunately for the ANC, it looks as if this is a Gauteng phenomenon. So I think in Ekurhuleni, the ANC just might hold on to it.
Yeah, and looking like Mzwandile Masine Messina could be
Yes.
the mayor over there. So that one's straightforward. However, Rustenburg is not so straightforward, and that's one that's again in contention. And there are talks that there could be coalitions to try and work in Rustenburg to try and again take that one away from the ANC.
The project of kicking the ANC out seems to be quite consistent. I mean, the EFF has got a rapport in Rustenburg, they've got a rapport in the northwest, and for them it's a strategic area, Marigana surrounding area, and so forth. And I think that there as well, they are going to cause problems. They are going to emphasize the question of land and so forth. They want to be seen as standing at least alongside the community in that area. And that for them requires that they kick the ANC out. It seems as if there is just the wider agreement among the opposition not to work with the ANC.
What are the ANC doing about this? This was a big blow to them, and all of these coalitions, anti-ANC movements, and I mean taking these major metros away from the ruling party, it's a big dent to them. But as the political ruling party after the NEC, what decisions have been made? I mean, what are they going to do to try and turn around the party?
They talk about introspection. I think this has hit the ANC much harder, much rapidly than they have thought. I'm not surprised that it even took them to go into the NEC to try to cobble out, to work out a position about this. They have been so displaced by this that they might have to just resound to being an opposition. And I think if they become an opposition in those areas, perhaps they will go back to doing the basics of galvanizing support at the grassroots. Because being an opposition, you learn to know that 2% does count.
Yes.
Previously, it never counted for the NC. Now they're going to get to work on their machinery on the ground to get the people back to believing in the party. That is humbling experience. It could help them to sustain themselves for a long future.
Yeah, it could, but it'll be interesting to see what happens in the general elections, because, I mean, you've got a lot of political analysts talking about the fact that, and I actually quote one saying this morning, saying, with opposition parties wanting to extend their cooperation agreements and working so closely together, this is going to give the ANC a very, very big run for their money come the national elections. Do you agree, or do they have time to turn things around by then?
It's true. I mean, if you look at this, the 2016 local government election, it feels as if it's just an extension of 2040. So we are getting to be permanently on an election kind of term throughout. From now it's going to be the 2019. Local government, very critical by the opposition parties. They use local government to demonstrate that they can be trusted with government at national level.
Yeah.
Hence, these cities are critical. They are very strategic to the opposition parties, and the ANC will have to work very hard to convince the people to actually retain those cities.
Ralph, just finally, we've spoken about all of this. We're talking about minority parties and no outright majorities in some of these major metros. What about me, you, and the rest of South Africans? Is this going to be a frustrating time for us? Because, as you say, these negotiations are going to be a lot lengthier, a lot more robust. But when it comes to service delivery, is this going to improve, or is it going to be stalled again because of so many disagreements that happen at these deciding levels?
Well, there is a cost to democracy. If you want an open, engaging democracy where processes are being followed, where there is engagement across different political parties, you have to bear the cost of delay in decision making. And us as citizens, we are going to have to bear that. And I know that the province has got the right to intervene where service delivery is being affected. But I don't think that the provinces will be allowed to just march into those cities, into local government, into municipalities to try to fix it. Opposition parties will go to court. So there will be tensions. We will learn more as citizens about how important democracy is and also how critical local government has become in showing that.
All right, Ralph, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Ralph Mathekga is a political analyst talking about the announcements made by the political parties yesterday and the situation that we as South Africans find ourselves in. And perhaps one could say this is democracy in action if we've ever seen it in our years. So very exciting times. Ralph, thank you.
Thank you
we'll
so
see
much.
lots of you, hopefully, in the future to talk more about this. Let's take a break.